You're clean, aren't you? Except for your tower. You're a tower junkie, Roland.
Hello and welcome to Tower Junkies, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. Tower Junkies is a podcast celebrating the work of Stephen King with a special focus on his magnum opus, the Dark Tower series. We discuss the themes, characters, and mythology of the series in Palaver episodes, and review the books and comic series in Kef episodes. We also discuss non-Tower King novels, TV and film adaptations of King's work, and the latest news about all things that serve the King. You can find more of our work at TowerJunkiesPod.com and follow us on every level of social media at Tower Junkies Pod. I'm one of your hosts, Matt Hurt, and with me today, as usual, is Tiny.
Hey, guys.
Hi, Tiny. How's it going?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Good. Do you want to tell the audience what we're doing today?
We are reviewing The Institute, the latest from Sir King.
Yes, we are. And before we do that, we do have some Stephen King news that I don't have on the list here. News actually broke today. Well, where to begin? The one piece of news that I had. Shudder's reboot, remake, revision of Creepshow on Shudder was officially renewed for season 2 today.
Cool.
As of this recording, we're recording this Halloween Eve 2019, and tomorrow the season finale airs. Which is interesting because I don't remember the name of the story that it's going to have, but it is based on a short story. It's an adaptation of a short story from Joe Hill's latest short story collection, Full Throttle, and that segment is going to be directed by legendary effects artist, I think, Tom Savini.
Oh, cool.
So that should be pretty cool. I know, Tiny, you said that you were going to consider getting a Shudder subscription and checking it out. Have you done any of that yet?
Have not done that yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I've still only watched the one segment of one episode.
Okay.
I'm really excited to just go in and watch all of it.
Nice.
Really excited because I guess episode 2, one of the stories has cast in it Kid Cudi.
Interesting.
I'm a fan of because he was the band leader on Comedy Bang Bang for like 20 episodes.
Okay.
I think he did like surprisingly like incredibly well on it.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm really excited to see that.
Cool.
So that's kind of all the King news that I have. There's a bunch of other news. I keep saying this, but Tiny, let's commit to it. In sickness and in health. No.
Jesus.
Let's commit to it. When you get back from Louisville, let's do a Stephen King News Roundup episode.
Okay.
Nice.
I'm game.
Sweet. So that's all the news we have. Check the show notes for the link to the article about all that. Tiny, do you have any Stephen King check-ins?
Yeah, it's not that exciting, though. I just finished listening to Dr. Sleep for the second time.
Nice.
I didn't pay as close attention to it as I would have liked, or as I did the first time around. But
sure.
But yeah, I listened through it again. Held up just as well.
Nice.
Loved it. Yeah, I can't wait for the movie. So
yeah, me neither.
Yeah.
And on that note, I actually have a check-in for that. I don't know why I haven't gotten the email about it, but I'm going to attend a screening for Dr. Sleep that's going to be the night before it comes out. Not to brag or anything.
Sweet.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I had every intention of just going like opening night and everything. Yeah, Wednesday the 6th. Like, check this out. So, Wednesday the 6th, I'm going to see Dr. Sleep, an advanced screening of it. The night before that, Kirsten and I are going to go see an advanced screening of Knives Out.
That's sweet.
So I'm very excited about that.
Cool.
And then that Friday, I'm recording with You're Gonna Love This or Not podcast. Yeah, it's going to be a full week.
Yeah, you got a full docket.
Yeah, and Monday I'm recording with Ben, the Lighthouse review for Obsessive Viewer. But the reason I'm going, because I actually had a ticket to see Dr. Sleep on Thursday when it came out, Thursday night. I'm going to the advanced screening because I was asked, or I how am I gonna? I was approached to do a guest spot review on Hypable.com. So I'm going to write a review for Hypable, and that should be posting on Hypable.com the weekend of Dr. Sleep's release. So
nice.
Hopefully it's not horrible, the review. I have have you heard any of the buzz around Dr. Sleep?
I haven't.
People are saying it's good.
Nice.
People are saying that it's like kind of the big the big buzz thing that's going is that people are saying it's the best Stephen King adaptation since The Shawshank Redemption.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's pretty big.
But yeah. But my friend Karen from Hypable.com, she actually asked me if I wanted to write the review, and I said, I wanted to share this on the podcast to show people how insane I am. I said, here's a peek at what I assume the review will look like, because I think in any professional endeavor, it's good to have a sample of what you're going to provide. So I put, quote, Dr. Sleep features a cat named Azzy. However, it is this reviewer's opinion that Azzy is not as cute as one Pizza Roll Hurt. In this review, I will outline exactly why Pizza Roll, pizza to her friends, is the superior kitty to the one featured in Dr. Sleep. Number 1. Pizza loves her daddy. It's true. Even though she's a cat, she still finds time to show affection toward me, her adopted father. Daddy to her. Number 2, litter box presentation. And that's all I wrote.
Oh my God, you're a dork.
So look forward to me never being asked to write for Hypable.com again.
Jesus.
But I'm looking forward to that movie. I'm very excited about it.
Nice.
Other check-ins, I pre-ordered If It Bleeds on Audible, because it is available to pre-order, so I did that.
Cool.
And then I tweeted, it's never too early to pre-order a Stephen King book. Which is exactly how I want everyone to read that tweet. But yeah, so I'm excited for that. And yeah, The Outsider has a release date and trailer. Have you seen that?
I did. I watched the trailer. It looks pretty cool. It looks a little bit cooler than the book actually was.
Yeah, I'm very curious how it's going to fare, because I need to reread the book. Also, that puts such a wrench in our plans, because ideally, I would love to do a full Mercedes trilogy or Bill Hodges trilogy review series, and then The Outsider, and then the book, and then the show. But I mean, I don't think that's possible with our timeline.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm curious how they're going to handle it, because it gets to some kind of weird places, so I'm interested.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, looks cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right, I think that's all we have for check-ins. Shall we go into our review of The Institute?
Yeah, thir.
Sweet. So I'm going to read a plot summary courtesy of StephenKing.com. The Institute was published September 10th, 2019, by the way. And here is the plot summary. In the middle of the night, in a house on a quiet street in suburban Minneapolis, intruders silently murder Luke Ellis's parents and load him into a black SUV. The operation takes less than 2 minutes. Luke will wake up at the Institute, a room that looks just like his own, except there's no window, and outside his door are other doors, beyond which are other kids with special talents, telekinesis and telepathy, who got to this place the same way Luke did. And that's all I'm going to read for that. So this is the latest book from Stephen King, and it has already been optioned for a TV, I think, event series or limited series, by the people who, I want to say, adapted Mr. Mercedes in the Bill Hodges.
Oh, okay.
I think, yeah, for Audience Network. Which includes, I can't remember one of the guys, but the other guy is Jack Bender, I think, who did a lot of directing for Lost, and, Game of Thrones.
He did like half a Lost or something like that.
He did like an obscene amount.
Yeah. Sweet.
So I'm looking forward to that. So, Tiny, non-spoiler thoughts. How did you feel about The Institute?
I really dug it.
Nice.
As per usual, the characters were super relatable and just enjoyable characters all around. I think as far as the characters go, one of the fun parts of it was that I think the sort of villains of the book, or antagonists at the very least, had a lot of character and were well developed, and to the point where I sort of sympathized with them at certain moments of the story, and that's not typically something that you get with a Stephen King book, or at least, when you think about The Shining, you don't sympathize with the hotel.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, typically you don't spend any time doing that. But I thought it was a fun aspect of the character development in that regard. And the plot just had me hooked from the get-go. What was going to happen. There's some fun, like, adventure stuff. I think, from the fact that the story is from the perspective of like a 12-year-old, 12-year-old kid is pretty fun, or gives it a unique perspective, because it's not like, it didn't make me think of like Danny Torrance in The Shining,
right,
where a lot of the book is from his perspective, as a 5-year-old, because I feel like being 12 is old enough, and it's not a spoiler, the kid, the main character, Luke Ellis, is like a genius pretty much.
Yeah.
And so I think that made the perspective even more unique. It's not like, oh, it's from the perspective of a 12-year-old. It's like, okay, well, that's not that crazy, but he's a 12-year-old genius.
Yeah.
That gives the extra edge, made it kind of stand out as a perspective, and all that stuff. And it was, it wasn't like some token scary story or anything like that. This was a pretty standalone story with a cool plot and good characters, like always. I'm not sure what else to say about it as far as non-spoilers. I'm sure there's stuff we'll get into, but just general thoughts. I really, really dug it, and like I wanted to get back to it. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to like, oh, that's right, I was listening to that book while I'm in the car, and I'll put it back on. It was like, no, I'm going to turn on my Bluetooth now because I can't wait to turn it on. It was one of those deals, so I was really into it.
Real quick, brief aside, how cool is it to have Bluetooth like connect to the car?
It's nice, yeah.
Because I've been using my mom's car for the last few weeks, and like, oh my, it's perfect.
Nice, it's awesome.
So wonderful. But anyway, yeah, I think you liked the book a little bit more than I did.
Okay.
Not to say that I disliked the book. I do think that there are some, I wouldn't even call them issues, but just like things that didn't mesh well with me. Little bits here and there that we'll get to in spoilers, but I thought it was a very strong thriller and suspenseful enough book. I think the suspense angle is what kind of strung me up a little bit.
Okay.
But the thing that kills me is the media, like reviewing the book and everything. I haven't read any reviews of it or anything, but I did see a headline from a reputable like pop culture website when the book was released that said, like, the pull quote of it was like, "The Institute is Stephen King's scariest book yet." And I'm like, is it though, buddy? Like, it's not really that kind of book per se.
Right.
It's more suspense and, like you said, adventure kind of angle to it, and like it's not inherently scary. And I think that's what people, and we've talked about on the podcast several times before, but that's what people get muddled with Stephen King, is his brand versus what he actually produces.
Right. Perception versus reality.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like if we could redo that one scene from 500 Days of Summer with just Stephen King, split screen, expectations, reality.
Yeah.
God, that's a great scene. But anyway, yeah. So like that, I don't know, that kind of, I felt like that was worth noting a little bit, but
he will forever be stigmatized.
He will,
as a horror author. Yeah.
Yep. But this book, I did enjoy the momentum of it. I felt like the propulsion of the plot was really well done, and it kept me invested throughout it. There's an interesting narrative kind of technique or kind of thing that he does in this book, that I wouldn't say prologue and epilogue, but like there is a narrative that sandwiches the Institute narrative. So it's not a spoiler because it's the beginning of the book. Like, we're introduced to a character who does not reappear until much later in the book.
Right.
And we'll talk more in spoilers to that, but like, just those first like 100 or so pages just felt like just Stephen King.
Yeah.
And it just felt like it was exactly the type of story that I want. And then it's abandoned because we're introduced to Luke and the Institute and everything. I just felt like there was, I think the first, because I re-listened to it and finished it today, I think the first time I listened to it and absorbed it and everything, like, I feel like I was a little jarred by that, but like I just wanted to go back to Dupre.
Yeah.
And I wanted to spend time with Tim and Wendy and is it Sheriff John?
Right.
And all them. But yeah, like the actual machinations of the Institute and like the things that they were doing there and the things the kids were subjected to and the kids were doing and being forced to do was very interesting. And there was like, I mean, King is up there in age. He's in his 70s now, but like there's still, he retains a little bit of an edge to him. And it's on display there. It's nothing too gruesome or anything, but there's like ideas present that are just disturbing, especially when that's being subjected to kids.
Right.
Like things like, just like little things, like there are a couple of comparisons to Nazi Germany and in particular the like experiments that the Nazis were doing and everything. And it's like, it's an apt comparison and everything.
Definitely.
And it's just, it's pretty disturbing.
Yeah, that stuff got me a little bit.
Yeah. Nice. So overall, and we'll go into spoilers, how do you think this stands in King's bibliography? Is it a shining example?
I was going to say, I'm not sure if it's at the top of the tower, but no.
Would it carry on in your heart?
God, I'd say it's kind of middle of the road, frankly.
Okay.
I feel like most of Stephen King's books and stories objectively are not like bad. There's like maybe a handful out of 55 novels and let's call it 50 short stories that he's released, which I'm sure it's more than that. But let's say out of 100 stories, there's probably less than 10 that are like just not good. If that.
I would sell my soul if that's not.
Oh God.
I just wanted to say sell because I didn't like that book.
Even parts of Cell I was into quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
Like some of the the group stuff and
I need to revisit it. Yeah. I really do.
So, but I would say that's that's pretty much a bad one.
Yeah.
With Cell. But yeah, like I think he's pretty good and this was I don't think there was anything especially remarkable about the Institute, but it definitely wasn't bad. I don't think it was even close to bad. I thought it was relatively good, but objectively, I'd say it's a pretty much middle of the road kind of book for King.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think I agree. Would you revisit it?
Probably not. I think there wasn't a lot of complexity to it either. Whereas like Under the Dome, which has like a ensemble cast. There's a bit of an ensemble for this movie too, or this book. Yeah. But the complexity just isn't there.
Yeah, it's more contained.
Right. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Like I'm not knocking it for that. It's just a characteristic that's different. Whereas I'd love to reread Under the Dome at some point. I've never done it.
I did earlier this year. It's so good.
I need to just listen to it, get the audiobook. Yeah. But this, I feel like I pretty much absorbed all the nuance for the most part, and it's all there, and I don't feel like there's much that I would gain from revisiting it.
Very good. Yeah, I agree. I want to touch on something that you said in that run of words that you just said.
Okay.
It's interesting. Like he does have like those big tomes in his bibliography that are nuanced and have so much just complexity and character to it. Under the Dome, The Stand, 11/22/63, It, obviously the big one.
Right.
And this might be more of just a laid back, more conversation starter for another part of the podcast or anything, but do you think / would you hope that he has another one of those in him? 'Cause, like,
Oh yeah, I always hope he has another
Yeah.
one of those in him. Yeah.
do you think that, just judging from like Sleeping Beauties and The Institute and The Outsider, do you think that his prowess as a novelist, do you think that he would be? Would you expect it to be something that he could come out with in the next couple of years?
I don't know that I expect it, frankly.
Okay.
Because I think he's sort of past his prime. I don't know if that's fair to say. Because Dr. Sleep came out in 2012, 13?
2013.
2013.
Yeah, funny story I'm going to bring up when we review it. But
Okay.
on my Facebook memories, there was I had shared in July, or it would have been like September of 2013, like just like a link that had like all the international covers for Dr. Sleep and everything. It was like right before the book came out, and like my Facebook post was, oh my god, these look amazing, I can't wait to read this. And it was 2013. Took me 6 years to read that fucking book.
Yeah, nice.
So, but anyway,
But that's like Dr. Sleep's. I mean, I hate to say it now, but spoiler alert, that's going to be like a top 10
oh nice
favorite of mine of his.
Oh,
that was
that's awesome.
That was only 6 years ago. You know, he was around 70. So I'm not saying he doesn't have great books in him still.
Right.
But I just, and like Under the Dome came out in 2006, 7.
Was it? Or I want to say it was like 2009 or 2008.
Was it that old? I thought it was like, I want to say it was 07 because I think I remember talking to our friend Jack about it, and he read it while he was deployed.
Oh.
And I think he was deployed in 07, 08. He read it like 3 times because it's like one of the only books he had, and he loved it. And I remember he and I talking about it when he got back.
November, or originally published October 2009.
Well, shit, maybe I'm wrong. Or maybe he deployed at a different time. Anyways.
Yeah.
But anyways, like, that was only 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So it's completely possible, but yeah, I don't know if I want to expect that. I feel like he's been doing the collaboration thing a lot,
Yeah.
lately.
Owen King and
Right, and with Sleeping Beauties, I don't think that worked out.
yeah.
I don't know if that book could have been, if he had just done it himself, if it would have been better. That's pure speculation.
Well, I read a lot of Audible reviews of Owen King's like solo novel double feature.
Mm-hmm. Not good.
Very, very few positive reviews.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I continue to hope that he cranks out great stuff, and if he throws out another Under the Dome, I'll be excited as hell.
Yeah.
Excited as hell for it. But yeah, and he kind of did the sort of almost series thing for a while with the whole Bill Hodges thing, which I like those books a lot. I'm a big fan of them, and I'm totally fine if he keeps writing stories like that in the Institute. I no problem with that whatsoever. But it'd be kind of nice if there was one more like tentpole, big ensemble King book still out there somewhere.
Totally.
That'd be just to kind of just as a bookend. To use a fun analogy, just as a bookend on his career would be cool.
What? So, just to clarify, what do you mean? He's gonna live forever and write forever, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, okay.
He's gonna Tupac it.
Okay, good.
20 years after he died, they'll do he'll be doing readings in holograph form.
Nice. Oh, that's the dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. I don't. This is not something that's been substantiated or anything. I just heard thought that I saw somewhere, and I never followed up on it, but like there are like rumors somewhere on some corners of the internet that he has like a book written that he expressly once published posthumously.
Oh wow.
But I really don't know. Like that could just be some person on an internet forum just spitballing something like years ago. But
who
that'd
knows?
be pretty cool.
That would be cool.
Yeah. So did I give my overall thoughts?
No, I don't think you did.
No. So I think this is a very solid entry in the Stephen King canon. He continues to show that he has this very unique grasp at writing stories where children are at the forefront. And like one of the strongest points I thought of the book was the way that the kids interact with each other, and it just felt just very organic and like just they're together in this weird scenario, this weird place. But he does such a good job of just writing the kind of child society that rises out of the circumstances that they're in. I found that particularly engaging. There's some moments that, again, I'll talk about in spoilers, that I felt like kind of like it was kind of dull for a little bit. Like there were moments that should have been more dramatic, but it kind of felt like, I don't know, it kind of felt like he was just kind of writing to get to the next big point. And a lot of toiling, as you like to say on the podcast.
Okay.
So I felt that a little bit, but overall, I thought this was a very solid book and a good story. Like, I really enjoyed the story of it, and there's some interesting stuff I want to talk about the villains as well. And it's funny that we read this so soon after reading Dr. Sleep, because I found some interesting correlations between the villains in each book.
Okay.
In particular, the way that they are somewhat sympathetic, or I wouldn't say it's not as clear-cut a black and white thing of like, oh, evil people taking children or evil people doing this. It's like their reasoning for it, like you can follow their logic of it. I found that really compelling. Yep. So shall we go into spoilers for The Institute?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to play a little bit of music here. We are going to go into spoilers for The Institute. If you have not read it or don't care and don't want to be spoiled, go ahead and listen to me yawn in your ear, and then turn off the podcast and come back when you've read it. Yeah, so we're going to go into spoilers for The Institute. Thank you, and spoilers on. Okay, so let's talk about the structure of this book.
Yeah.
We didn't talk anything about Tim in Dupre and that whole storyline. So how did you feel about the first, I don't even want to say first third of the book, but the first portion of the book where it's all Tim Jameson finding his way to Dupre, the whole great events turn on small hinges portion of it?
Yeah. I was into it. You know, I felt we had our everyman like Stephen King is wont to do, and I was definitely into it. And then what's notable about it is like you said, the structure and how its place in the story. I think it was a goofy decision that I didn't really love, to where the first 80 pages or whatever were with Tim, and then we jump to Luke and we don't visit him we don't come back to Dupre and Tim till there's 100 pages left in the book.
Yeah.
And that I didn't love it, but at the same time, I think if we have no introduction of Tim Matheson at the beginning of the book, and we start with Luke in Minneapolis, and he goes through all his trauma and he escapes and he gets to a town called Dupre in South Carolina, North Carolina,
so. One of the
Carolinas.
Yeah.
And he meets this guy named Tim. I think it loses some of its that meetup.
It becomes Deus Ex Machina,
right?
Because it's just a random person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, given the way that the story unfolds, it does require that kind of sandwiching structure.
Yeah.
I think my big thing about it was that I was just so enamored with this whole idea of just this wandering guy with not even a troubled past, just like some skeletons in his closet that he's trying to get away from. And there is kind of a small sense, it's not very prominent, but a small sense of just like being drawn towards something. And like,
yeah.
I just really liked that. And I told you when you had started reading it, that in the adaptation of it, like, I would love so much to see Tim Jameson portrayed by, why can't I think of his name? The Punisher, The Mist, Thomas Jane.
Okay.
And have Sheriff John be played by Andre Braugher. So it would be like a reunion of the Mist actors.
Yeah, totally.
And like I told you that, like after I knew, like, oh, they're not in the story like hardly at all. And so, yeah, but, man, I really, like, I would be so into that if that was the casting.
Oh yeah, totally.
But yeah, but just the, I don't know, it's what Stephen King does best. He creates this world that has just everyday normal people, and also the narrator, Santino Fontana, I think. Mm-hmm. The way he speaks for Sheriff John, like there's like every time I'm just like I loved it. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But
I love that too. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just, and then he does it toward the end of the book. I'm like, I missed that.
Yeah, I agree. He did a good job. The narrator, Santino Fontana.
Yeah, he really did.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
I believe that he is a renowned actor of the stage.
Oh, okay.
I think.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but yeah, he did a really good job.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really loved the Dupre stuff, and also pop quiz, hotshot. I don't know why I called it.
Okay.
Sorry. Night Knocker. Had you ever heard that before?
Not even a little bit.
Okay. Me neither. And it's a funny thing because I Googled like Night Knocker to find out what it was. Pretty much the only responses on Google were people asking like what a Night Knocker was.
Really?
At the Institute.
Huh.
But I really liked it. And I like the kind of humbleness of Tim Jameson as this guy who was a cop who had an altercation, which I have to, I kind of had to separate myself, like kind of just go with the flow, because I was like, dude fired his gun, fired a warning shot in a mall, that did not, it just didn't seem right for the way that it was being told. But, but aside from that, I was really into his story and everything.
I agree, yeah.
Yeah. And then we go to Minneapolis.
Yes.
That's another thing. It just, he does double duty to set up characters and everything.
Right.
So, I don't know. I do want to mention, before we get into Luke's storyline and everything, I do want to mention, I may have said this on the podcast before, but since this is the review of the Institute, there was a Facebook, I'm in a few Stephen King Facebook groups, and there was one that happened, a few days after the book was released. Someone had commented and posted on the Facebook group for Stephen King, one of the Stephen King fan groups, and said, 7 pages into the Institute and already an untruth jab at President Trump.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and it was the reference to the librarian that gives Tim a ride, saying that, mentioning that Trump and his cronies have taken funding away from libraries, and she says Trump and his cronies wouldn't know culture if it bit them in the ass or something like that. Mm-hmm. And people in the comments, I think it was eventually erased by the mods, but people in the comments were like, well, he's not wrong.
Yeah.
The Trump administration did cut funding here and all that, and then the guy never responded to it, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But it was so great because someone had posted a comment, and I was like, this person is a freaking hero. Let me find it real quick, because I took a screenshot of it. So this person on the Facebook group for this Stephen King Facebook group put a long list of things with green check marks next to them. I'll run them down really quickly. Gay kid thrown off a bridge, check. Black kid stomped into the mud and his dog murdered, check. Black woman raped and her child murdered, check. Small boy has his arm ripped off, check. Innocent man killed on death row, check. Women killed with shotguns, one pregnant, and then the recovery house for abused women burned down, check. Kids run over by tanker trucks and possessed by evil spirits and flesh-eating vampires, check. A sex scene in which 11-year-olds run a train on a little girl to save them all from a space spider monster, check. That's entertainment. But do not, I repeat, do not ever criticize Trump. Red X, Red X, Red X. I thought that was perfect. And then, if that wasn't enough, this person commented with a screenshot of an Amazon order that said 20 copies of the Institute bound for local reading groups and lending circles, just for you snowflakes. So this person had ordered $381 worth of copies of the Institute to send specifically to like reading groups and lending circles.
Awesome.
Like, that is so fucking great.
Nice.
Yeah. So, just so satisfying. So anyway.
Yeah.
Night Knockers. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I had never heard that term before.
Yeah, me neither. Apparently, in my searches, a similar job title was a knocker-upper. In I believe England. I feel like maybe we talked about this on the podcast. I apologize for repeating ourselves, but Institute. The knocker-uppers were like someone in like Britain who would go like door to door and knock to wake people up for jobs and stuff.
Oh wow!
And I think that's where somehow that morphed into like the colloquialism of saying like, "Yo, you got knocked up."
Oh.
So yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep. So anyway, Luke Ellis.
Yes.
Part 2, the smart kid.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel about the setup of just the introduction of Luke, this child genius who gets basically tentatively approved or accepted into two, like MIT and I can't remember the other one, another like super prestigious school at the age of like 13.
Right. A really interesting character. You know, I think we've had a lot of kids as main characters, or at least primary characters in Stephen King books, and I think Luke stands out because he's a genius. That made him especially well equipped to deal with the trauma that ensues, as is evidenced by his eventual overcoming of that trauma.
Right.
But yeah, I think he's a really good character. I liked the setup because it's such a jolt when after he's kidnapped and like his quick realization of what's going on, how quickly he figures everything out at the Institute. But he's importantly in the setup, he's such an extraordinary kid, but at the same time, a lot of what he does and says is very ordinary, and it establishes him as he's just a kid, but he has extraordinary abilities. Yeah,
that's one thing that I really appreciated about the characterization of Luke, and about Luke is because because he is so like you said, kind of normal. He's not like the comparison I want to make is that he's not like a young Sheldon thing.
Yeah, right.
He's not like super off-putting or anything. He's just a normal kid who happens to have a genius IQ.
Right.
And I really liked the way that he kind of worked the system and escaped it and everything. One thing that I really was not really I don't know. I found this to be the most like kind of one of the most disturbing parts of it is that when they murder his parents.
Yeah.
Did not see that coming. I did not read the plot summary prior to reading the book, and like just the quickness of it, and the just like they're done, they're gone. It's just it was very surprising and jolting.
Really abrupt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, how did you feel about the actual institute itself? Like, the kids are all kind of brought together. There's front half, back half. And kind of the big overarching story of what they're doing there and everything. How did you feel about the Institute itself?
It got established pretty quickly, given all the variables of it. I feel like I had a pretty good visualization of it, and everything was described really well. And I think the fun part about the Institute is the sort of the culture of it being uncovered, especially like how the kids can just like get cigarettes and booze and stuff like that, and the sort of inner working politics of it, like, oh, this particular guard is particularly nasty, and like this person will shock you, or this person will let you slide on certain things, or you can always get a token out of this person for whatever. Those little nuances and minutia were just like really crucial in building a very detailed and satisfying environment at the Institute. And it was done to great effect, like Stephen King always does.
I definitely agree, and I do want to mention that I found maybe the most disturbing thing in the entire book was the whole concept of tokens and them being able to get access to cigarettes and booze. Because, and it's mentioned kind of later in the book, that it's to control them. It's to give them something that they will become addicted to, or they will need.
Right.
And that will force them to work to get tokens, and that will make them fall in line and everything. It's just such a disturbing way of controlling them,
right?
In such a capitalistic way, maybe, or I don't know what word I'm looking for.
I'm not sure if it's what King was going for, but a bit of an allegory for real life.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
How we all smoke and drink and smoke weed or whatever as a way to escape from whatever,
I was
to make us complacent.
Yeah, I was thinking about that because I drink occasionally, but I don't smoke or do the drugs or anything. But like I was thinking about that, like, I mean, sugar, caffeine,
right?
It's a weird thing when like I actually can feel like my body being like I don't want to go so far as to say jonesing for it, but like I'm like I could really I'm really feeling like a Coke right now.
Yeah.
This will set me right. And it's like it's a very real thing.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chemical dependence.
Yeah. Hey, do you want a Coke, by the way?
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah. So anyway, I was thinking about that a lot. But anyway, yeah. So the whole setup of the Institute. Let's kind of jump a little bit and talk about the actual. Should we talk about the actual motivation of it, or should we talk more about the escape and everything first? And Maureen, we should talk about.
Yeah, I don't care. Probably the escape.
Okay. Let's talk about Maureen first, actually.
Okay.
So I gave you the illusion of choice. Here's a token. But no. So Maureen and Avery also, the kind of very gifted telepath that they bring in. Let's skip ahead to Maureen's death. That I also like. If the whole concept of the Institute is the most disturbing part of it, them finding her hanging in the like janitor closet with the message "Hell is waiting." How was it? It was "Hell is waiting, and I'll see you there, or I'll meet you there." Very, very like visually like disturbing.
Definitely.
Also reminded me a bit of It, the beginning of It.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Just really, really good and disturbing.
Right.
In a book that doesn't have much like in way of gore or like disturbing imagery, that really stood out to me and felt good. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. So, did you have any thoughts on Maureen or Avery or the escape?
I was for a long time. I was curious about like Maureen's motivations, and like I knew that she was. It was revealed fairly quickly that she was kind of undercover, and trying to get the kids to admit things and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I was just wondering if throughout up until a certain point, I was wondering if she was like had ulterior motivations, ulterior motives, and she was goading Luke into something and trying to get him caught up in something, and it was a trap that was going to spring eventually. Like that's sort of what I was thinking.
Very interesting
that she was doing, and then after a certain point, I think it was after he kind of brought Avery into it, and he had that conversation with Avery or whatever between all three of them. that point, I was like, okay, I think she's actually just genuinely trying to help him at this point.
Yeah.
And I never predicted that she was going to kill herself or anything.
Yeah, that came as a shock.
Yeah.
I will say that the idea of her, the possibility of her kind of turning and selling out Luke and his plan and everything, and
I felt like she was just kind of setting a trap, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, I feel, is more interesting than the actual escape itself.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like, I mean, throughout the pages where it's depicting Luke's escape from the Institute, it just felt, how to say it? It felt a little bit like King was just kind of writing to get to a point. It felt very process heavy. Like, okay, Luke found a boat, and now he found the train, and now he's eating the crumbs of the donuts, and then now it's like trying to get him to Dupre, and I don't know. I don't know. How did you feel about the actual escape?
That was one of my favorite parts.
Really?
I really dug the escape. I don't know. I liked the detail of it. Mm-hmm. I think, prison breaks just by their nature are very interesting stories.
Sure.
And so that it had that feel to it. And I feel like, a bulk of the story, as far as the reader, the setting is the Institute, and it's almost like I was starting to feel the walls,
Okay.
as a reader, and then to just be out in the open and out in the world, and he's going through these woods, and now he's on the river in a boat. It was just very exciting and thrilling, and it.
Nice.
For whatever reason, it worked for me, especially the when he's like on the train and stuff like that, and trying to hide out on the train, and his mind is going 1,000 miles an hour and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know, that worked for me. I thought it was pretty fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
I just spilled water all over my leg. But anyway,
you did.
We're professionals here. So, but yeah, I don't know. I felt like there wasn't much suspense for me there. Like, there was some, like, when he was describing, like, I don't know, the fear of being caught and everything. Like, there was some of that it was kind of getting my blood flowing a little bit there. But other than that, it just felt like, okay, well, it's a long walk to get to Dupre.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll reconnect with it more when I read it again. Mm-hmm. But I will say that in re-listening to it in preparation for this episode, it was just kind of stepping stones to get to the climax for me.
Okay, that's fair.
I will say that when he is interacting with other people, whether it's the guy at the train yard or it's Tim and the rest of the people at Dupre, that I found very interesting, specifically because I put myself in the adult's shoes. Like, I can't fathom how I would react if, like, this kid tells me this crazy freaking story.
Right.
And I Google his name, and, he's on the lam for murdering his parents, according to the media. Like, I don't know, just I don't know how I would... Like, usually, when Stephen King has these fantastical stories that are, like, just out-of-this-world crazy, like, I bring myself into the character's perspective of it and everything, and, like, this was an interesting scenario because I took myself into the everyday character's headspace for it, and I thought, like, I don't know what it would take for me to believe what Luke is telling these people if I were in those people's shoes. So I did like that. Let's talk a little bit about the Institute and everything, because another thing I found really disturbing was what they were doing at the Institute. So they were amplifying the telepathy of the kids and using them. They would put them into back half and using them to they use the phrase, Luke uses the phrase that they are psychic drones. Such a cool concept. Like, having these kids who have these, like, capabilities, this telepathy and this telekinetic energy, using that to an extent brainwash them through like propaganda footage, not even propaganda footage, just ordinary footage of these politicians and stuff, so that they can use that power to execute them, execute the politicians and everything, and thereby control like the world stage. Just so rich, I thought. Like, I thought that was very interesting and compelling. How did you feel about that kind of Manchurian Candidate psychic drones kind of thing?
Yeah, I was curious as to where it was all going and what they were really doing. I found myself at a certain point, because it had been revealed that the kids had telekinetic and telepathic capabilities. I was like, what if these people are the beginnings of North Central Positronics, and they're gathering children to break a beam. You know, I was like, holy shit, what if he ties this into the Dark Tower?
God, that would have been so cool.
That's what I was thinking, and it wasn't that, obviously, but yeah, still really cool, and that's very, very high concept, and not like, obviously it's science fiction,
right?
But it feels,
or is it?
Right? It feels like if telekinesis and telepathy did exist, there'd be some assholes who would use it for this purpose. You know, it would it would automatically be, you know, government funded organization would try to clandestinely collect these children and use them for nefarious purposes. Yeah. You know, that's what this story is, but with a nice Stephen King twist to it. So
absolutely.
Or with his spin on it, I guess. Yeah, I thought it was really, really compelling. Yeah.
Just the way that he describes them, like the back half, like movies. Like, I wrote in my notes, the films shown to the kids in back half are really disturbing to me, specifically because they start by showing cartoons to kind of lull the kids into it, and then they just show their targets in everyday life, and then they finish it with, like, the way it's described is Dr. Hendricks holding an unlit sparkler. And, like, that, like, what my brain conjured up when I read that part is just this older doctor just standing motionless with an unlit sparkler. Kind of like, it kind of got the sense in my head of, like, an art house film that makes no goddamn sense. Like a French New Wave kind of thing, that this means, like, something entirely different. But in the context of this, it just, like, that imagery just stuck with me, and it made me just really creeped out. And knowing that they're using that to just kill these people is really interesting. And the justification of it, because, like, we're jumping ahead a little bit, but we're kind of closing in on the end of the story a bit, and the review a little bit, I think. But the concept of it, or the justification for it, that they are doing this because they have, like, in other places, they have, like, precognitive, like, people that are telling the future and saying, like, okay, this person is going to cause a chain reaction to do this, and to do this that'll eventually lead to this, and if we don't kill this person now, this is going to happen later, and the world's going to end. Yeah. So they have this, like, noble justification in their own eyes, and it's not a concept that Stephen King hasn't played with before. Like, I mean, he's throughout his whole career, he's had this obsession with this type of story, and I think it's really great that he's finding unique ways to do it. Like, I'm thinking like The Dead Zone,
right,
and 11/22/63,
yeah,
and now this. It's just an interesting kind of. It speaks to his talent that he can revisit this concept multiple times in vastly different scenarios.
Right.
Yeah,
and he kind of comes it usually comes to the conclusion that, like, you know, don't mess with things. Like, things happen for a reason, or, you know, something like that.
You might say all things serve the beam.
Right. Yeah, something like that.
So, let's talk about Dupre. Oh, should we talk a little bit more about the kids? Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Well, I mean, that kind of mixes in with Dupre anyway, because they have their little revolution and their mutiny. Which, let's talk about that. First of all, I did notice, and this is just a nitpick, that I don't understand why King did this, but there's one of the kids' name is George Iris, and another character's name is Iris Stanhope, I think.
Okay.
And I'm like, I got confused both times I listened to this book. I'm like, wait, George Iris or Iris Stanhope? These are two kids? Why not just name one something else?
Yeah.
That kind of bothered me a little bit.
Okay.
But they're mutiny and everything. Like, Avery is this powerful telepath. They eventually kind of band together to use their psychic abilities to revolt against it. And then, like, that in concept I loved. Mm-hmm. But then they spend like 60 or 70 pages just sitting there before they do a goddamn thing.
Yeah.
That I felt like did not... Like, the payoff was fine because, like, the way it's described is they, like, levitate the buildings.
Right.
And destroy the Institute and several of the kids die.
Yeah.
Very, like, intense climax there, but, like, the lead up to it's just like, all right, just get the show on the road. Like,
yeah.
The staff is mixing up this, like, chemical thing, and that's kind of compelling and kind of tension filled, but it's like they're just sitting there doing nothing.
Yeah. That's true. I hadn't really thought about that. I think I liked the climax and the mutiny thing. I thought that was super satisfying because these people did such terrible things to these innocent kids.
Yes,
and they, a lot of them get their comeuppance. Mm-hmm. That's really satisfying. But I guess I hadn't really thought about that. They do just kind of sit there for a while.
Yeah.
But all the pieces were trying to fall in line. I think that's justification for it. But it could have been done to better effect, maybe.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the reason why King. I think that this book is a lot of that for King, like a lot of setting up pieces, and everything. Like even Tim and Dupre and everything, and setting up Luke and setting everything in motion. It's just a lot of things in motion. But the actual climax in Dupre, and I kind of feel like this had a similar feel to, like, the actual violence and the action that happens in it, the gunfight and everything. Like, it kind of reminded me a little bit of Sleeping Beauties to a small extent.
Okay.
Like in Sleeping Beauties, there's like an all-out war fought at the prison, and like, I should really at some point revisit Sleeping Beauties, but I feel like both Sleeping Beauties and here, it just felt like I wasn't as strongly invested in what was going on because, like, the characters weren't that important to me at that point.
Okay.
I think part of that is because, we spent like 80 pages in Dupre, and then we were in the Institute for like 400.
Right.
And then we had the back 800 or 80 or so in Dupre. And like, I was like, okay, well, all right, Faraday is the Deputy Faraday, and then like at one point I was like, wait, so is Sheriff John alive? And then like the next like few lines, the audiobook's like, oh, Sheriff John's dead. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah, are you dead? So yeah, I feel like there was that. That's where the book faltered a little bit for me.
Okay. See, that worked pretty well for me again.
Really? Interesting.
The whole climax in Dupre. Yeah, it worked for me. I'm not sure why. I really liked the Annie character. Orphan Annie. She was just funny.
She was great.
Fun comic relief and her whole conspiracy thing and all that stuff. She was entertaining.
Oh, yeah. I loved her. And I did find the relationship between Tim and Wendy very charming.
Really?
It's set up in the beginning a little bit, or it's hinted at that, like, he asks Sheriff John, he's like, and if I asked her out, would she say yes? And he's like, and then we meet back up with them, and they're dating. They have their own little thing. Mm-hmm. And then they actually go to the Institute, and that's where it all kind of converges. That's where the kids destroy everything, and I thought I was satisfied with it.
Totally, me too.
Yeah. But then we get kind of the epilogue with the Lisp Man.
The
Lisping Man, and that's where we get a lot of the. Oh, first, let me because I'm going through my notes here real quick. Before that, I thought that this was so just beautiful. Avery is kind of the center point of the mutiny, and like he stays behind, he sacrifices himself, several of the kids die, and everything, and he dies along with them. But I love the line where it says that Avery's final thought was, "I loved having friends." I was that is so just, man, that's powerful. That's beautiful.
Hits you in the feels.
Yep. And so then we get the lisping man. The surviving kids are kind of staying with Wendy and Tim, and they're slowly kind of getting, shoved off into different places.
Right.
Sent on buses and everything. And the lisping man it's basically a exposition dump, I guess, or kind of a tying up loose ends dialogue.
Right.
He's explaining this is why it's all happening and stuff and everything. I like the ambiguity of it, and I really appreciate the way that it's, we followed the logic of the villains pretty clearly. And
right.
I believe that they believed that they were doing the greater good.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And that kind of moral ambiguity is something that I think is really really strong at this stage in King's career, I think.
Yeah.
Really, really good stuff.
Right. And that's where some of that small little bit of empathy for the villains comes through.
Yeah.
Is in that moment, I think. The Mrs. Sigsbee character.
Yeah.
I was picturing, I don't know why, I don't even think this makes sense given the description of the character. I was picturing Jennifer Goodwin, the actress.
Oh, interesting. Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Huh.
Because I think the character is like this tiny little petite, old, somewhat middle-aged maybe woman.
Maybe, yeah.
And Jennifer Goodwin is not that, but I'm not saying she's fat or anything. I'm not saying that, but she's not a tiny little petite woman, and she's not old.
That's really, wow. Because, I immediately think of her performance in the new Twilight Zone, and, the way that she is, because she's playing, a housewife in that, kind of waspy housewife and privileged housewife. I totally, that feels like Mrs. Sigsbee.
Really? And it's funny because I'm not even, particularly a fan of Jennifer Goodwin.
Oh, really?
I don't hate her or anything. I'm most familiar with her on the show Big Love.
Oh, yeah.
And I think she was a little bit annoying on that show, but the character was kind of annoying, so I don't know. It's weird. I just pictured her. She just popped into my head for some reason.
Next time I listen to it, I'll definitely picture her then.
Nice.
Yeah. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't say that I know her best from the pivotal, the quintessential, the go ahead and say brilliant. He's just not that into you. So.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I think I saw that movie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think I did, too. I think I've seen it 5 times.
Wow.
Let me actually see how many times I've seen it. But anyway, there are a couple of Stephen King references that I want to bring up here. Because, okay, he's just not that into... It's a good ensemble thing.
Is Kevin Connolly trying to bang Scarlett Johansson in that movie?
Yes.
And then, Bradley Cooper is married to Jennifer Connelly?
Yeah.
Okay, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently I've only logged it twice on Letterboxd. That can't be right.
WTF.
Yep. And I rated it 4 stars out of 5.
Oh my God.
Unashamed. But anyway, a couple Stephen King references. Rom-com cast? Oh, we would probably get in trouble.
No.
With Comcast. Yeah, damn it.
Yeah, anyways.
Rom-com podcast. Podcast rom-com.
How about just Romcast?
Romcast? Go with that. Funny side note, and I mentioned this to you, and this is just for the benefit of our listeners to not listen to us anymore. At Heartland International Film Festival, check out obsessiveviewer.com. There's a documentary about romantic comedies called Romantic Comedy, and we did not get access to a screener before the festival, and so I wrote this very long thing to you, Tiny, that was ridiculous and stupid.
Can we not?
We can. And we will. So let me find it here real quick. Oh, that was a different thing. So I said, since we couldn't get access to a screener, I said this to a bunch of people because I'm an idiot. I'm going to find out when the next time the director is going to be at an airport, and then I'm going to run after her. And when I catch up, I'm going to give a speech in front of everyone in the airport, and I'll say, Elizabeth, I thought what I needed was a bunch of Heartland screeners, but what I've learned is that even though there's so many other screeners out there, I want yours. And I don't care if I have to register an account on Film Freeway to get access to it. And I don't care if it's only going to screen twice at Heartland. All I know is that seeing your documentary made my heart land. And then everyone would applaud, music will play, and one person in the crowd will yell, "Oh, give him the screener already!" And everyone will laugh and cheer.
I hate you. Would make my heart land.
Postscript to that, I saw the documentary in Heartland, was not too crazy about it.
Okay.
So, yeah. Anyway.
That's funny.
Yeah, so, okay, we're kind of winding down this review. I do have a couple Stephen King connections that were made in this book. Mm-hmm. I'm sure I missed several, but two jumped out at me. The first one is the more overt one. Orphan Annie references Salem's Lot. Directly.
Okay.
And she mentions there's weird stuff going on all over the place. Head up to Salem's Lot and find and ask anyone what happened 40 years ago if there's even anyone up there anymore. Huh. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Also, Tim mentions to Luke, because Luke says something about Annie, and Tim mentions that Annie isn't always, he says, well, Annie's not really on the beam, so to speak.
Oh,
so
yeah.
That was pretty cool. Another thing, this is more conjecture and everything, the kind of concept of this book, the concept of the story of these kids using their mental power to break down society, basically. Mm-hmm. It's very similar, like you alluded to, the Breakers of the Beams and the Dark Tower series and everything. I kind of wonder if the depiction of the Beam Breakers in the movie The Dark Tower, which shall not be referenced too much, I wonder if that influenced King in some way for this. Does that make sense?
Maybe.
Yeah, there's no way to know.
Yeah, I don't know. He probably wants to get that out of his mind just as much as the rest of us.
It's tricky because he did endorse it, but that was before it came out.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah,
but
know. Maybe.
Yeah. So any final thoughts on the Institute?
Just that I thought it was a good middle of the road Stephen King book. Nice. I really enjoyed parts of it, but some of it was a bit of a chore to get through, I guess. Mm-hmm. But overall, 90% of it, I was on board and enjoyed it.
Nice.
I really think I've recommended it to a few people. So
nice.
Yeah, I enjoyed the crap out of it. I'd probably give it, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably give it about 6.5.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. On a scale of 5 stars, I think I gave it 4 total.
Okay.
I enjoyed it quite a bit. The thing is, I've read 35 Stephen King novels. This was the 37th Stephen King book that I've read. Mm-hmm. And just those numbers, there's obviously it's a lot. I have this ranked at number 22 out of those 35 novels.
Okay.
So it's not on my top 19, but I liked it. I really did. I thought it was an engaging premise and a fun story about kids being subjected to horrible things.
Right.
Yeah. So this won't break your top 19.
No, I don't think so.
Fine. We will talk more about your top 19 in a few weeks when we talk about Dr. Sleep, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah, so ahead on the podcast, we're going to kind of wind down. That's our review of The Institute. Let us know what you guys thought of the book and of our review here. looking ahead on the podcast, I did not share this with you, Tiny, but I did map out the rest of the year.
Okay.
Nothing that we'll have to really stick to too much, but basically, this week we're releasing The Institute, and then next week we've already got these episodes recorded and edited, but next week we're diving into our Shining and Dr. Sleep review series. So we're doing the Shining novel next week, the movie, the Stanley Kubrick movie the week after, and then the week before Thanksgiving we're going to do the Shining miniseries, and then finally the week of Thanksgiving, I'm really hoping we can pull this together. We're going to hopefully release 2 episodes that week. The Dr. Sleep novel and Dr. Sleep movie review.
Nice.
Yeah, and then sometime in December, I think, is when we're going to get around to actually doing Castle Rock. So,
sweet.
So look ahead to that, and also check out Patreon, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer for exclusive content for Patreon supporters. We just recorded like 2 hours ago a conversation about the most scared we've ever been. So check that out. Just pledge $1 and you get access to all that content. And if you pledge $5, you get access to video content. We just released a video review of Motherless Brooklyn, and that came at the heels of 6 Heartland Film Festival vlogs that I did of increased fatigue and exhaustion throughout each one. So pledge $5 for that, and that also gets you access to the RSS feed for the Patreon-supported stuff, too. So, all right, I think that does it. Tiny, good luck in Louisville.
Thank you.
Yep. Hope you don't get trapped in any cars by a rabid St. Bernard.
Yeah, me too.
Or don't go back in time.
That'd be kind of cool,
Yeah,
though.
that would actually be really cool. Yeah. Okay, well, that'll do it for this episode.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for listening. Long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.
And now, here's a short clip from our Patreon exclusive RSS feed. To hear the full clip and more exclusive Patreon content, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and become a patron at the minimum rate of $1 per month. Thank you and enjoy.
Again, it was night, and it was I think it was early fall, so it was getting down into the 50s, I want to say, at night. I think it was getting cool. And he had, the home had some sort of woods around back, and I had a flashlight, nice flashlight, typical security guard, and I was shining the flashlight into the woods, and the light picked up and reflected 3 sets of eyes looking back at me, and they were not moving, and they were absolutely pairs of eyes, 3 pairs of eyes. I was like, what the fuck?
Tower Junkies is edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. For a full archive of our episodes, go to TowerJunkiesPod.com/archive. You can also like our Facebook page at Facebook.com/TowerJunkiesPod and follow us on Twitter at TowerJunkiesPod. If you enjoy the show, please take a couple minutes to leave us a rating and a quick review on Apple Podcasts. This is the easiest way to support what we do, and all it costs is just a little bit of your time. If you'd like to donate to the podcast, you can make a PayPal donation at TowerJunkiesPod.com/donate, or support us on Patreon for recurring donations and access to commentary tracks and B-roll audio recorded exclusively for patrons at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Every donation goes toward paying the fees to keep the podcast running and is greatly appreciated. For official Obsessive Viewer merch, including shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more, visit our TeePublic store. You can find a link to the store in the show notes of this episode and at obsessiveviewer.com/donate. Or you can simply search for Obsessive Viewer at teepublic.com. For information about our annual live event showcasing short horror films from local filmmakers, check out shocktoberinirvington.com. And for an archive of all our events, as well as news about potential future events, head over to obsessiveviewer.com/live. For more podcast content, you can find our flagship movie and TV review and discussion show, The Obsessive Viewer Podcast, at obsessiveviewer.com and on Twitter at obsessiveviewer. You can also find Anthology, Matt's solo podcast covering The Twilight Zone, and other classic and contemporary science fiction anthology TV shows at anthologypod.com. facebook.com and OV Anthology Pod on Twitter. And finally, check out The Secular Perspective, Tiny's side project podcast, which tackles current events and life's big questions from the perspective of secular hosts Chad and Amanda at thesecularperspective.com. Music for the podcast is provided with permission from Fingers T on YouTube. Additional bumper music is provided courtesy of As Good As It Gets, which can be found at facebook.com/asgoodasitgetsband. Thank you so much for listening. Long days and pleasant nights.
Kitty!